The first scream I ever ignored almost broke me. I want to start there because everything else I am going to tell you comes from that moment, that one decision on that one night in the first week of my posting. If I had gone toward that sound, if I had let the part of me that spent 20 years as a search and rescue volunteer take over, I would not be here talking to you. I know that now the way I know my own name. But on that first night, I did not know it. On that first night, I just had a rule on a piece of paper and a scream in the dark and every cell in my body pulling me toward it. I stayed on the route. I kept walking. And in the morning, when I was back at the staging cabin and the coffee was hot and the sun was coming through the window the way it does in the Alaskan summer, barely setting before it starts coming back up again, I sat down and I tried to understand what I had done and why and whether it had been right. Took me a long time to get there, but I got there. My name is Gene Morin. I am 57 years old. I have been a night patrol ranger in the Tongass National Forest in southeast Alaska for 3 years. Before that, I was with Search and Rescue in Juneau for 2 decades, which means I spent 20 years running towards screams in the dark. I spent 20 years believing that the sound of a person in distress was a call that had to be answered every single time, no matter what. That belief kept people alive. I am proud of it, and it is the single most dangerous thing I brought with me when I started this job, because out here, in the section of the Tongass I patrol, that belief will get you killed. The forest I work is not on any public trail map. It sits in the interior of a peninsula that juts into the Chatham Strait, old-growth Sitka spruce and western hemlock so thick in places that the canopy closes out the sky entirely, even in the long Alaskan summer days. The understory is wet and dark and dense. Devil's Club and ferns chest high. Creek drainages every quarter mile, running cold and fast off the ridge above. The kind of terrain that swallows a person without trying. The kind of place where, if you step off the trail, you can be genuinely disoriented in under 2 minutes, even if you have been working it for years. I was given my rules on the first day by a woman named Paulson who ran the regional coordination office out of a building in Sitka that had no sign on the door. She was maybe 60, practical, the kind of woman who has been dealing with difficult information for so long that she delivers it the same way she would deliver a weather report. She handed me a sealed envelope and a radio and a set of keys, and she said, "Read the envelope tonight before your shift. Follow what it says. Come back in the morning and we will talk about questions." I asked her what kind of questions she was expecting. She said, "The kind a person has after their first night in that forest." Then she picked up her coffee and went back to her desk, and that was the end of orientation. I read the envelope that afternoon in my truck, in the parking lot of the staging cabin. The sheet inside was typed, single-spaced, 2 pages front and back. No letterhead, no agency name, just rules. I am going to tell you those rules, and I am going to tell you what 3 years of living by them has taught me about what they mean. The first rule said, your patrol route covers 8 miles of interior trail divided into 4 sections. Each section has 2 checkpoints marked with a green reflective post. You will complete the full route twice per shift, once between 9 in the evening and 1 in the morning, and once between 2 in the morning and 6 in the morning. Do not alter the route. Do not take shortcuts. Do not add to the route. Walk exactly what is marked, exactly in the order it is marked every single shift. I have walked that route close to 2,000 times in 3 years. I could walk it blind. Some nights it feels like the route is walking me, like my body has absorbed it so completely that my legs just do what they do and my mind can be somewhere else entirely. I used to fight that feeling. Now I trust it. The route knows what it is doing even when I do not. The second rule said, do not use your radio between 11 in the evening and 2 in the morning unless you are declaring a personal emergency. During this window, dispatch will not respond to standard check-ins. Do not interpret the silence as a malfunction. The radio is working. Dispatch is monitoring. They will not respond. Do not repeat calls. Do not switch frequencies. Keep the radio on your person and wait for the 2 in the morning window to resume contact. The first time I hit that window and the radio went silent, I spent 20 minutes convincing myself the equipment had failed. I checked the battery, the antenna connection, the channel setting. Everything was right. I keyed it twice more and got nothing, and then I remembered the rule, and I put the radio in my vest pocket and kept walking. At 2 in the morning, dispatch came back on like nothing had happened. I asked them why the blackout window existed. The dispatcher, a young man whose name I never learned, said, that window is when the forest is most active. Radio signals during that period draw attention we do not want drawn. I asked what kind of attention. He said the kind that follows the signal back to its source. I have not questioned the blackout window since. The third rule said, screams heard after dark are not to be investigated, reported, or responded to in any way during the shift. Log the time, the direction, and the duration in your written log. Do not key the radio. Do not alter your route. Do not slow your pace. At the end of your shift, transfer the scream log to the end of shift report and submit it to coordination. Do not discuss scream logs with other patrol personnel. That is the rule I told you about at the start. The one that almost broke me on the first night. I want to tell you more about what the screams are like, because I think you need to know before you hear one. They are not distant. That is the first thing. You would think that a scream you are not supposed to respond to would be a far-off sound, something you could tell yourself was ambiguous, maybe an animal, maybe the wind, maybe your own tired mind playing tricks on you after 4 hours alone in a dark forest. They are not like that. They are close, within 100 yards most of the time. Sometimes closer, 40 yards, 30. Once, on a night in my second year that I still have not fully processed, I heard one from what sounded like 20 feet off the trail to my left, a woman's voice, sharp and desperate and cut off mid-sound the way that first one was cut off on my first night. Total silence after, like flipping a switch. In 3 years, I have logged 216 screams. They come in clusters, 3 or 4 in a single shift, and then nothing for a week, and then another cluster. They are never the same voice twice. They are always human. They are always convincing. In 20 years of search and rescue, I developed a reliable instinct for genuine distress. The sound a person makes when they are truly in trouble is different from the sound a person makes when they are frightened but safe. Every scream I have heard in this forest triggers that instinct. Every single one of them sounds like the real thing. I log them and I keep walking. That is all I can do. That is all any of us can do. The fourth rule said, if you find footprints on the trail that are not your own, note the direction of travel and the approximate size, and continue your route. Do not follow them. Do not search for their source. If the footprints are on the trail ahead of you and appear fresh, slow your pace by half until you reach the next checkpoint. At the checkpoint, stop for 5 minutes before continuing. The pause resets the spacing between you and whatever made the prints. Do not try to close the gap. I have found footprints on the trail more times than I can count. Most of them are large, bigger than my own size 11 boot, with a stride length that suggests something significantly taller than a man. Some of them are bare. Not bare the way a person goes barefoot on a warm day. bear the way something goes that does not wear shoes because it has never needed to. I have slowed my pace on 41 occasions and waited at the checkpoint for 5 minutes, and each time the feeling of something ahead of me on the trail faded by the time I started walking again. The pause works. I do not know why. I follow it without needing to know why. The fifth rule said between midnight and 2 in the morning, do not look up. Keep your eyes on the trail surface or at eye level. Do not look into the canopy. Do not look at the sky. If you hear sound from above, note it in your log and keep your eyes down. This rule sounds strange until your first night when you hear something moving in the canopy above you in the dark, and every instinct you have tells you to look up and find it. I have followed this rule every night for 3 years. I have never looked up during that window. I do not know what is up there. I have made my peace with not knowing. The sixth rule said, the trail will sometimes feel wrong. You will be walking a section you have walked hundreds of times, and something about it will feel different. The spacing between the trees, the sound of the creek, the way the ground feels under your boots. When this happens, stop. Take your compass out and confirm your heading. Check the nearest reflective post marker and confirm the checkpoint number. If everything confirms that you are where you should be, continue. If anything does not confirm, do not move until it does. The feeling of wrongness is not always in your head. Sometimes the trail changes. The compass and the markers will tell you which kind of wrong you are dealing with. I have used this rule 11 times. 9 of those times, the compass and markers confirmed I was where I should be, and the feeling passed within a few minutes. Twice, the markers did not confirm. The first time, checkpoint marker 6 was labeled with the number 4, which was impossible because I had passed checkpoint 4 40 minutes earlier. I stood on the trail and stared at that marker for a long time. Then, I took out my compass and walked due north by the needle for 200 yards until I hit the creek drainage and followed the creek east until I found the real checkpoint 6 marker in the right place with the right number on it. I do not know what the false marker was, or how it got there, or what would have happened if I had accepted it and kept going on that trail. I do not want to know. The second time, all the markers were gone. Every reflective post on a full-mile section of trail had been removed or had simply ceased to be there. No holes in the ground, no sign they had ever been there. I stood in the middle of that section with my compass out and held my heading due west for the full mile until the markers reappeared and I was back on the known route. I logged it in the anomaly column as marker absence, 1 mile section, compass navigation required, resumed standard route at checkpoint 7. Coordination sent me an email the next day that said, noted, thank you for holding your heading. That was the whole email. Thank you for holding your heading. The 7th rule said, at the end of each shift, before leaving the trail at the southern terminus, remove 1 boot and set it on the ground beside the last trail marker. Hold it there for a count of 30, then put it back on and leave. Do not skip this. Do not abbreviate the count. Paulson explained this one to me when I asked about it in my first week. She said the boot carries the scent and the wear pattern of a person who has walked the route. Setting it on the ground at the terminus communicates to whatever reads those signals that the route was completed, that the patrol finished its work. She said it the same way she said everything, matter of fact, like she was explaining how to file an expense report. I do the boot count every single shift. 30 seconds of my time to close the loop on 8 miles of night work. It is the easiest rule to follow and somehow the one that feels most important. The 8th rule said, if you hear your own voice on the trail, speaking words you have not spoken, stop walking and sit down on the trail surface. Do not speak. Do not respond to the voice. Sit in silence until the voice stops. When it stops, stand up and continue your route. Do not log this in the standard log. Write it in the personal log kept at the staging cabin. This log is reviewed monthly by coordination. I heard my own voice for the first time 4 months into my posting. It was saying my name, my full name, Gene Morin, in my own exact pitch and rhythm, from somewhere in the timber to the right of the trail. I sat down on the wet ground in the middle of the trail at 11:40 in the evening, and I sat there in the rain for 6 minutes until it stopped. Then I stood up and kept walking. In the personal log, I wrote, own voice, duration 6 minutes, direction east. No specific content beyond name. Coordination responded to that entry with a single line. Duration under 10 minutes is within normal range. Continue standard protocol. Normal range. I have thought about that phrase for 3 years. The idea that there is a normal range for hearing your own voice speaking from the forest at midnight. The idea that someone at coordination has enough data on this particular phenomenon to define what normal looks like. I find that either deeply reassuring or deeply troubling, depending on what kind of night I am having. The screams are the hardest part. I want to come back to that because I do not think I have said enough about it, and I think it is the thing that will test you more than anything else this posting has to offer. In my second year, the screams started coming in longer sequences. Not one and done, 3, 4, 5 in a single section of trail, spaced about 10 minutes apart, each one sounding like a different person, each one as close and as convincing as the first. On one night in February, I logged 11 screams in a 2-hour window, all of them within 100 yards of the trail, all of them cut off the same way. That immediate total silence after. I walked my route through all 11 of them without altering my pace by a single step. And when I got back to the staging cabin at 6 in the morning, I sat in my truck for 30 minutes before I could make myself go inside. I called Paulson that morning. First time I had called her directly since orientation. I told her about the 11 screams. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "They are testing the boundary." I asked what boundary. She said, "The one your route makes. The consistent nightly patrol creates a kind of perimeter. What is inside that perimeter tests it periodically to see if it holds. The screams are the test, not responding is how you pass it." I asked her what happens if you fail it. She said, "We go back to what was happening on this trail system before the patrol started." I asked her what that was. She said, "The same thing that was happening on the Wyoming trails before 1987. Then she said, "Keep walking your route, Gene. You are doing fine." And she hung up. I have never looked up what was happening on the Wyoming trails before 1987. I do not need to. I understand enough. 3 years in this forest have taught me one thing above everything else. The forest does not care about me personally. It does not want me there, and it does not want me gone. I am a pattern to it, a recurring signal, a set of boot prints on a trail that appear every night at 9 and disappear every morning at 6, and in between make the kind of steady, predictable movement that communicates in whatever language this forest reads that this ground is claimed, that someone is here, that the boundary is maintained. The screams are a test of whether that is true. Every night I pass the test. Every night I log the time and the direction and the duration, and I keep walking, and I do not go toward the sound, no matter what the sound does to the part of me that spent 20 years running toward it. That part of me is still there. I want you to know that. It does not go away. You do not train it out of yourself, and you do not reason it into silence. It is there every time, awake and ready, listening for a reason to move. What you do is hold the route up against it like a wall. You put the rule between you and the instinct, and you keep walking, and you trust that the people who wrote the rule knew something you do not. They did. They do. Trust the rule. Log the scream. Keep walking. Hold your heading. Do that every night, and you will be fine. I am still fine. 3 years in, and still walking the route, and still logging the screams, and still setting my boot on the ground at the southern terminus for a count of 30 before I go home. Still fine. That is the best I can offer you. Still fine is enough. Out here, still fine is everything.